Hello guys, I hope you are doing super well. Today I'm going to talk about stuttering correction. I generally talk about overcoming stuttering because I believe it has more to do with the mental aspect of feelings and emotions. And I think it's the basis for understanding the whole concept of stuttering and overcoming it completely. A little to provide context, we know there are two types of stuttering: tonic stuttering and clonic stuttering. Tonic stuttering happens when you get stuck, you start speaking and you can't get the word out. And clonic stuttering is when you repeat words or when you get stuck on a syllable, when you repeat the words. And there is another type of stuttering called mixed stuttering, which is when you have both. Although, in my opinion, generally people who stutter have the two types of stuttering because one leads to the other. When you get blocked, it is very likely that also you repeat words, although obviously there are cases where a person has just one. In my case, I had both. A little explanation for those who don't know about stuttering: there are simply two forms. The first is blocking and the second is word repetition. That's it. In a real context, when stuttering truly manifests, it happens like this. You're talking and yes, I am. And you have to let go. And then? And the word doesn't come out. You're really blocking yourself constantly. And it's very likely that when you block yourself the first time, you'll keep blocking yourself and you'll continue to block yourself constantly. I define this type of stuttering as blocking the air, and the air doesn't come out of your mouth, so you can't get the words out. And your muscles tense up completely, and you can't get the words out. And the other in the real aspect is like you're like this yesterday and it is very likely that when you get stuck on a word, you'll keep getting stuck on others, and then you start stuttering and exaggerating it much more. How do I correct stuttering? Because it is a question that many kids and many people have. There are many kids who want to correct their stuttering from what they already have, from the speech they already have, and there are too many methods that make you add things to the speech you have. For example, trying to breathe with each word, leaving gaps in each word. There is another method of speaking robotically, and that way you retrain the brain. Other times it's the fact of speaking very fast. Speaking very fast so that people don't understand you. And there are many types and many methods and many ways that add to the way you are speaking. I prefer, and in my case, I think the most important and easiest thing is to relearn from the new. It's about removing all the speech you have and starting to learn again. Look, in construction, it's often much more viable to build from the new. I mean, it is sometimes much more viable to demolish the old and rebuild something. Because many times when you build on the old, it implies much more economic expense and that it will take you more time in the designs. Something makes you rigid because you already have something established. So it limits you because you have to start from what is already there. And many times, not in all cases, but in some cases, when you build on the old, often the new reveals the cracks of the old. Why? Because the old starts to consume the new. And this is also very true in life. Look, I'm going to tell you a story. One day, a martial arts master asked Bruce Lee how he could learn all his knowledge and secrets about martial arts. So Bruce Lee took 2 cups, a glass full of wine and a glass full of water, and he said to the master, Your knowledge is the cup of water. My knowledge is the cup of wine. For my cup of wine to fill with water. Have your cup of water. First, you will have to empty your cup of water. First, you will have to empty your cup of water. First, you will have to empty your cup of water. First, you will have to empty your cup of water. First, you will have to empty your cup of water. And that is the first tip I want to give you. Reading is the most important thing to redevelop speech. The more you read, obviously you have to read pronouncing the words. I mean, it doesn't help at all if you read mentally, and if perhaps there are many people around you, then read softly. But what happens is that you have to rehabituate your brain to keep reading fluently. I'm going to show you an example. Here I have a book, and I'm going to read the first text. I'm going to read it as if I still hadn't corrected the stutter, so I start to read. And you see, there I got stuck. So there I am not getting air. I have to calm down and read again. I knew that sometimes And you see, there I am going to get stuck on the word. The word I'm going to say is little. If I know I'm going to get stuck on the L, I have to come down and start again. I knew that sometimes a little, and there it doesn't come out. Yes? Do you see that it's not coming out? Okay, so I start to relearn that word again. The word I'm going to say is little, and I start to say little. The letter is P. How is P pronounced? And what I am going to add is the O. And then follows the CO. You break it down into the letter, the syllable, and the entire phrase. You start breaking it down until you get it. I knew that sometimes a little bit of fear is good. When you have... There I got stuck. I breathe and start again. When you're afraid that things will get worse if you don't do, I can't keep staying there because I already know I'm going to get stuck on that word. I breathe. Look, it's not coming out. I break it down. Something. The word I can say is something. And I do it many times until I start rehabilitating my brain. And then I start reading again. I knew that sometimes a little fear is good. When you are afraid that things will get worse, if you don't do something, fear can prompt you to action. See? You start reading. And reading and reading, and reading after reading, you become more skilled and you flow more. Remember, if you see that you're going to get stuck, simply relax and let the air pass. If you see you're going to get stuck on a word, breathe. Say it again, break it down, and say it again until you get it right. Try many times, and you will become a master. We know that the brain has readjusted to speak in the way you do now, which is in a way that you stutter. For example, when I was little, I had gotten used to speaking in a certain way, and then I stuttered a lot and got stuck on words, and I knew which word I was going to get blocked on, and which word I was going to have much more trouble with. And that is very clear to you. I know you have this very clear. There is also an important aspect. And that you take responsibility for the way you are speaking. Because it's very difficult for you to say, no, it's not my fault. I believe that's something with the brain. No. That's something of yours. You are the one who has brought the stuttering, and you are the one who speaks like this. And it's okay. Remember that it's okay. It's not wrong. If it's wrong, it's because you're labeling it. Stuttering is very beautiful because it involves knowing yourself and the act of correcting it. Although I don't like the word correcting, I prefer the word evolving, because correcting it has to do with like, oh, that's wrong, let's correct it. That comes from school, right? When they teach us that this is wrong, it needs correcting. I think stuttering should be evolved. In terms of dialogue, when you are about to say a certain word, that thought immediately arrives telling you that you will get stuck on that word. And what happens is, how do we rehabilitate our brain to say that word fluently again? For example, if the word is heart, you know you are going to stumble on that word and that thought will come telling you, we are going to stumble on this word. How does one? So that our brain gets used to it again and says it fluently? And here, you have to be very creative. One of the ways many kids do it is by saying it the same way and simply adding a pause. You pause and start to say the word again. You take for example, a small breath and start to say the word again. But the problem is not in adding things to the word. The problem is in saying the word again, but relearning it so that the brain creates new neural connections. Remember that when you learn something new, or when you say it in a different way, the brain generates new neural connections. So if I am going to say the word again, I have to say it in a way that brings incoherence to the brain and makes it say, wow, but I was going to say it this way, and you say it another way. And then the brain cannot differentiate between the new form and the old form, and it will then have to readjust to the new form. So if I'm going to say the word, one way I can do it is by changing the accent or changing the tone in which I say it. If I say the word, and I know I will stumble on the word corazón, I have to change the accent. And I, for example, am talking, oh yes, my heart hurts a lot. And if you see that there is a change in the tone of the heart, there is a change in the tone of the word, so the brain can readjust again. You can also explore many ways of how to say the words you will stumble upon. You, for example, have in your dialogue, you have a collection of words on which you will stumble. Maybe it's all of them, whatever it may be. It may be yes or it may be no. That depends on each aspect of each person, because stuttering is very relative. You have to find a way to explore so those words come out smoothly, suddenly doing the clown. There is a type that is Luis Miguel Morareo that I learned a lot about this guy, and that he talks about the fact that you can bring out the words by doing the clown. You do the clown and get the words out. The clown is like, oh yes, I'm going to get the word out, and there you get the words out, and what happens is the brain creates new neural connections through the way you are speaking. And what we want is that for your brain to kind of go into conflict with the speech you are making and with the new speech you are creating. Then your brain will enter like in conflict and won't know whether to go this way or that way. And your brain will ultimately lean toward the new thought and the new speech, because they are the new neural connections you are creating. That would be like the second tip. And the third tip would be to be very creative also with the aspect of exploring stuttering. Notice that there was one day when I hadn't overcome stuttering and was overcoming it. There is a friend of mine from Argentina named Cayo, and the guy once suggested to us, why couldn't we exaggerate the stuttering? And we all stayed there like, wow, really? Because that sounded crazy, right? Exaggerating the stutter. You see, it breaks everything. It's very disruptive, right? Wow is wow. I mean, you don't think that because what you want is to flow. But notice that it's very curious, because the moment he presents us with the situation of exaggerating the stutter, it implies that the brain is going to create a new neural connection because it's something you're not used to doing. You're used to stuttering, right? And that's normal, but you're not used to exaggerating it. I developed the act of exaggerating stuttering. I went to many places and exaggerated it. It was very curious because when you exaggerate it, you take control. And I think that is the most important aspect. When you start to take control of the stuttering, because you already know that you have the control. And it's very curious because at times you were stuttering more, but you had explored something very new. And it's the fact that first it was something you hadn't done, and it's really something new for you. And the second, you become aware that you are stuttering. Consider that many times when you haven't overcome stuttering, when you haven't corrected it, you aren't aware that you are stuttering. When you exaggerate the stuttering, you are aware that you are stuttering. That small difference is what makes you correct the stuttering much faster because you are exploring. This exercise, besides making you realize that you are tricking your brain because you are breaking something that is not normal, you also begin to enter through that door of overcoming stuttering. Remember that overcoming stuttering is related to fear. The fear of stuttering. So when you do this type of exercise, which is very creative, you break many paradigms about what stuttering actually is. To wrap up, I'll leave you with 3 tips. The first is reading. When you read, many times, you can also read something you like. And I think that way you kill 2 birds with 1 stone. You learn to flow much more. And you learn something you like. And remember that it's not about reading for the sake of reading. It's about reading so that the words come out fluently and to retrain the brain. And the second tip is about saying words and exploring ways for them to come out fluently. And here what we want is to create new neural connections and for your brain to gain confidence. And the third is the act of exaggerating the stutter. It doesn't have to be exaggerated. You have to look and explore different things. Play with it. Try to play with it to be creative. The more creative you are about the stutter, you will correct it much faster. And I think those are the 3 tips. And well, as I always say,